All right. I swear we didn't plan this. Guy and I were going to do a show together. First one in a while. And now it's good. Now we have really breaking news. The 49ers, how's this for a lack of drama and for a deal getting done early? That's what a lot of fans had been wanting. Deommodore Lenoir, who I will now say is a star cornerback. He was a star before this news, but now it's a bona fide star because he's being paid like 5 years, $92 million. The extension for Deommodore Lenoir. Those are the details we have so far. So we don't have many more, but this makes him one of the top paid cornerbacks in the game. Number 12 in APY, average per year. It's 18.4 million per year. And number 6, guy added it up in total value. So Lenor, who's established himself as a top 10 corner, is now under contract for a long time with the 49ers, guy.
Yeah, this is bad news. I mean, February, March, no holdout. What kind of content we're going to be doing? Maybe Purdy. I mean, it's bad news for the content, but it's good news for the vibes. It felt
we'll have Purdy, trust me.
Oh, we'll have, okay.
You'll have news. Yeah,
maybe Brock signs next week.
Maybe he holds out. Let's not say that too soon.
No, I mean, I think there is a difference, and it's not always this way, but I do think, David, sometimes it's this way, where you are drafted affects what type of contract you're willing to do, what you want to do. I think people have looked at Brock's deal. And this is not about Brock, but they've looked at Brock's deal and been like, the Niners are getting him at such a discount that it will be time to make up for that when it's time for his contract, which may be true. His agent will definitely argue that, right? But here you have Lenor, not a 7th round pick, but a 5th round pick, different than Ayuk, who was a 1st round pick. When you're making $14 million, you need that raise to be really big. When you're making 5th round pick money, and we'll find out what the guarantee is. It'd be fun to guess. I mean, my guess is the full guarantee and the total guarantee. But my guess is it's going to be at least $40 million in the full guarantee. My guess, like 2 weeks ago, I guessed that Deommodore Lenoir was going to sign for $70 million total guarantee and $45 million full guarantee. That's good money for anybody, but it's really good money if you're a 5th round pick. So it's a significant raise. And it's earned. I mean, we could debate it, but he is without question a top 10 pick of the Shanahan Lynch era. And remember, he was taken in the same draft a few picks ahead of Talanoa Hufanga. Like, this is such a testament to player development, his own player development. He was drafted. He was the 2nd corner they took in that draft after Ambry Thomas. If you go back 3 years, you would have thought Talanoa Hufanga would be the one signing top 10 money at his position, maybe top 5 money at his position, not Deommodore Lenoir. So this is without a doubt one of the best picks of their era, but I think it might be the best of those top 8 picks: Purdy, Warner, Bosa, Kittle, Greenlaw, Ayuk, Jennings. It might be the most impressive level of an individual player developing into a top player, even though maybe he wasn't that obviously right away. So you can only imagine the amount of work that went into him from him to earn this contract.
Yeah. So to 2021, they pick him in the 5th round. He wasn't immediately ready. 2021 was a season where the 49ers were extremely short at cornerback. That was the Achilles heel of that football team in 2021. So even when they badly needed corners down the stretch, it wasn't Deommodore Lenoir giving them that play. It was actually Ambry Thomas, who was in the same draft class, a 3rd rounder in 2021, who worked his way into a starting spot that season. But by 2022, Deommodore Lenoir had leapfrogged Ambry Thomas. But he was, football fans, especially Niners fans, they want it now, right? There's no patience there. So I remember the start of 2022, people were calling for Lenoir's head. I mean, people weren't happy with Deommodore Lenoir as he developed. But by the end of that season and heading into the playoffs, he found his stride in 2022. That was where he started picking up interceptions by the bunches. Remember, he picked off Dak Prescott against the Cowboys in the divisional round that season. I think he also had an interception late against the Seattle Seahawks in the wild card round of the playoffs that season. And then the people don't remember this, but the NFC Championship game, guy, That was because Brock Purdy blew out his elbow, so people kind of blanked that from their memory. But both 49ers starting corners, Deommodore Lenoir and Charvarius Ward, locked Philly down in that game. They didn't give up. I think they gave up 2 catches for 16 yards against the Eagles in that NFC Championship.
And the Devontae Smith catch should have been overturned.
And it should have been overturned, yeah. So that was a game where the 49ers were very impressive, but they didn't get credit for it because they had a quarterback who was playing without a functional arm. So that, I thought, propelled Deommodore Lenoir into the 2023 season, where he was legitimately good, but Charvarius Ward was a step better. And now Deommodore Lenoir is playing as, I made the title for this, he's playing as a top 10 cornerback. He's giving up a passer rating of only 65 into his coverage, which is number 7 in the NFL. And on top of everything, and this has been going on now for 2 seasons, he is playing inside and outside. This is extremely difficult, very, very difficult. But playing the slot cornerback position means that you have to be physical like this. You have to be a linebacker. Look at Lenor, upper left. He's lined up next to Fred Warner. And that's Bucky Irving that he has blasts. You have to take what you do agility-wise outside at cornerback, and you have to be tough enough to squeeze through offensive linemen and blocks from tight ends and lay the wood in tight situations against the run. So he's played about 2x the snaps that he has on the outside. On the inside this year, because the 49ers are nickel more often than they are at outside cornerback. And thanks to Derek Klassen, by the way, we borrowed his clip here from NFL Pro. But he's locked down on the outside, but he's also delivered this in the nickel package. And I think that's been huge for the 49ers identity.
Yeah, well, he gives them a lot of flexibility, right? He gives them a lot of flexibility. I think it's been very clear, right? You and I you're there every day. But definitely back into the offseason, Kyle Shanahan was asked about Lenor and Mooney Ward, and he made it very clear. You know, he was asked about Purdy a few times in the offseason, but he made it very clear that understandably, that Lenor was a priority for them. And it was clear, I would say, back in August, maybe even before that however you factor in the future for the 49ers, and remember that time, like post-draft, we were spending a lot of time talking about not just Ayuk's contract, but Ayuk and Debo as trade pieces around the draft, and how are the Niners going to figure things out and all of that. And I Shanahan and Lynch love to tell you how much they love their players. They love to compliment their players. It comes back, they say Debo is great, and then Debo uses it against them in a negotiation. That's the way it works. Both are the same, right? But they were very complimentary in the way you would expect. But I think I was a little uneasy in the offseason. Like, is this it? Is this the last year of Lenor? And Kyle made it very clear back then that it would not be the last year of Lenor. And these are the type of deals that are easy to do. When you've got a player that you think is a top 10 player, and you pay him top 10 money, but you're not battling over number 1. We'll see what the number is. Like it's easy to pay one of the top corners. It's easy to pay one of the top tight ends. It's not receiver money. It's not quarterback money, right?
Here's the money, guy. By the way, it's $18.4 million per year. This is all we know so far. You made the great point that we need to know some of the guarantees, and you made a guess, but Lenor's not on this list yet. But 24.1 is the top of the market with Jalen Ramsey. Charvarius Ward's at 13.5. Lenor is a little bit above Ward now. So he's the highest paid 49ers cornerback, and he's at 18.4. So quite a bit actually above Ward. He's at $5 million more, but only a couple spots above Ward, right under Jalen Johnson out of Fresno, by the way. Jalen Johnson for the Chicago Bears. Central High School. And we both have a Fresno connection. So, So you've got this top cluster. This is interesting to me. I don't know if hopefully people can zoom in on this.
Can you make it a little bigger?
Maybe I can. I'm trying to.
I guess I can just make the window.
Yeah,
bigger.
Here we go.
Yeah, there you go.
This might, this should help. Hopefully people can zoom in. I think you can on your phone. If you're on a laptop screen, just make it bigger across the laptop. Here's Ward at 13.5. There's Carlton Davis at 14.8. And then look, there's this gap between Davis and Jalen Johnson, 14.8 to 19 million. So you've got a $4 million gap there. And this is like the cluster of top cornerbacks. There's not really a gap here, just incrementally grows larger from Johnson to L'Jarius Sneed up to Denzel Ward, and then Surtain and Jalen Ramsey at the very top. So we obviously weren't going to be talking about Ramsey money at 24.1 million, but we were going to be talking about borderline top 10 money for Deommodore Lenoir. He ranks number 7 in passer rating allowed, and he's so versatile. So they got him at number 12 here, right behind Jalen Johnson.
Yeah. So looking at this, now that we know at least the total value, I think my guess from a couple weeks ago was too high, right? A 45 million fully guaranteed. Although he'll be in the 40s.
I'll sort it by fully guaranteed.
Yeah. So
that would be the, so you guessed at the very top. Now here's the thing though. They give him a lot of fully guaranteed money to stretch it out, right? That's signing bonus typically. And that means it prorates against the salary cap. So if they want to fit stuff in the near term, it's actually beneficial for the cap salary cap maneuvering to give him a lot of fully guaranteed money. We saw that with Brandon Ayuk. We've been seeing it with a lot of the 49ers contracts.
The total guarantee, I guess, would be in the 70s. There's only 2 guys that are in that range. But, this is not a position where there was an extreme outlier like at wide receiver. And, I think this will be a contract that looks good on paper for the Niners and makes him extremely rich. I mean, it's like this will fall in the category. And usually that's the way it is, I think, when you get a deal done in November of probably a win-win deal. So
I have a text from a coach, a title winning coach. I can't say who it is, but love the Niners re-signing Lenor. His rare ability to play the run as effectively as he does really opens up coverage options for the Niners. I think people often overlook how much of an asset it is when you have a player that simply opens up a plethora of options for defensive coordinator when game planning. You can play 2 deep safeties on rundowns a lot easier when you have a guy like Lenor.
That's from Bill Belichick.
Allegedly. It's from a good coach.
I believe you. That's cool.
From a good coach. It just literally came through. So
yeah.
It's allegedly from Bill Belichick. We'll let people think that. I'm not gonna correct you, but the thought is what matters there. I know that the person who sent me that knows football, knows defensive schematics, and he alluded to the versatility. Now it's funny because we go to the top of this list. You were talking about the total guarantees. What was your total guarantee projection again? You
70 total was my guess. That was my guess 2 weeks ago.
That'd be number 3. And it's entirely possible because, again, these contracts, it works a little counterintuitively. I think people need to really grasp this, is that fully guaranteed money, which is paid out in the form of a signing or an option bonus, can actually be prorated against the salary cap by rule over up to 5 years. And they signed Lenor for 5 years. So they obviously want to take advantage of the full proration. So say that you give a guy a $50 million signing bonus. That's only going to count 10 million against the cap this year and then 10 million over the course of the next 4 years until it adds up to 50. So you could keep the cap hit lower now so that you could fit more things now. You're playing the financial Tetris, and the 49ers have been doing a lot of that with these deals because they are a cash-rich team. They're willing to give out those bonuses, and they have a ton of star players. Lenor is now the latest star player under a big contract. So they can fit it all under the hood of the salary cap. So I don't think it's a poor guess on your part.
Okay.
I think it could be possible, and it's going to be really interesting to see. Matt Barrows reports that Deommodore Lenoir's 5-year deal has been agreed to. It should be official when Lenor signs the contract tomorrow morning. So he's set to sign it tomorrow morning, but he's agreed at least verbally. So it's locked in that regard.
David, I just thinking about him, and we've talked a lot about this year's draft class, obviously. And I think when the Niners made all their picks before we saw any of these guys on the field, it was pretty obvious that it was a high floor. Whether or not the ceilings were high, we'll see in the next few years, but that it was a high floor, older players, instant impact players, and that's proven to be correct. With Purdy, with Green, with Malik Mustafa, we're seeing Ricky Pearsall. Cowing is an example of how hard it is. Ayuk was an example of how hard it is to get on the field on offense as a rookie receiver for Kyle Shanahan. And Ricky Pearsall has done that. So he has passed a major test, even if we don't always talk about it. Like, I remember asking Shanahan about Cowing after one of his good preseason games. He's like, well, there's, there's a lot still to prove. And obviously Ricky's proven. So anyway, everyone understands that this class has been pretty high floor. What's great about, you think about some of the picks that haven't worked as well for the Niners, like Danny Gray or Ambry Thomas. These are guys who got opportunities a little earlier, but they were efforts by the Niners to make splash plays in the draft because they were drafting for traits. And Lenor is kind of this mix of what we've seen from the 2024 draft of guys who were just productive college players, physical, tough-minded, but we didn't necessarily look at him when they got him as like this big upside guy. And I think he clearly has turned into that because he's developed and he was given the time to develop. He didn't have to come in and play right, or he didn't get pushed out there like as early as Ambry did in the way that Ambry did. And it just makes me think about this 24 class that I've looked at as a high floor class, but maybe there are some high ceilings, especially given the way the Niners have succeeded in years past with some of their DBs. There was a year they were so good at DB, they couldn't keep DJ Reed around, and he's turned into be a really good player. So
I think they regret that though. But you know what? Deommodore Lenoir is DJ Reed. Like he's DJ Reed 2.0. Fifth round pick. DJ was a fifth round pick. DJ, by the way, is from Bakersfield. Shout out to the Central Valley again.
Oh, what high school?
But they've envisioned DJ as an outside-inside guy. And then that was a whole wave with an injury designation that they made in, I believe, 2020. And unfortunately, the Seahawks scooped him up. And I think the 49ers rue that. They wish they would have just eaten the roster spot at that point. But that didn't work. But they wanted a similar body type, feisty guy to play inside, outside. Reed turned out to be a big money dude. He's with the Jets now. He's a good player. And then they drafted Lenor in 2021. So I love that you brought up DJ Reed because Deommodore Lenoir is a DJ Reed that worked out with the 49ers.
I think people, just seeing some of the comments, like people think that Talanoa Hufanga is not going to get a big extension because he got hurt. I think they were setting it up for him not to get a big extension before he got hurt. I mean, that's part of the Jair Brown. To me, there's not like when you draft Jair Brown, that's to replace Hufanga. Having those two guys play together with one of them getting big money and then the next guy getting big money, it's not.
And now you have Mustafa.
But I just mean like when we look back, I think Hufanga was going to walk the whole time pre-injury.
They prioritize which positions they want to pay because at some point you can't pay every single position. For example, the 49ers have never paid huge money to a guard. They focused on center and left tackle offensively. They haven't wanted to pay right tackle. They've drafted there with Mike McGlinchey, but then they wouldn't pay him when his contract was up. They've paid one linebacker. They have shown the willingness to pay a corner before when they paid Charvarius Ward, but this is a new record for the cornerback position, right? So I think that there are certain positions that are not the biggest priorities where they feel they can get good bargain bin talent or good talent in the draft, and safety might really be one of them. I think that you were onto something there. I mean, Tashawn Gibson, they just brought him back. He's an emergency backstop. But Jair Brown and Mustafa, those are your two starters right now. And those guys are draft picks over the past 2 seasons.
They've got they have some physicality in the secondary from guys that aren't big. Like, that's the other interesting thing when you look at the profile of their DBs now. Right now, Mooney Ward, obviously.
It's gotten smaller, right?
It's gotten smaller.
It's not Legion. And that's the evolution of the 49ers secondary. It started as the Seattle-style cover 3. Any guy that's 6'2 or 6'3, if he plays corner, they're so rare, let's sign him, right? It was the joke. It was the running joke for like 2 years. Oh, there's a 6'2 cornerback. The 49ers are going to sign him. Doesn't matter if he sucks, so we're going to bring him in and we're going to try to turn him into Richard Sherman. It obviously didn't work. And then they brought in Richard Sherman himself. Like, oh, the prototype himself just got released by the Seahawks. Let's bring him in. That was one of the best moves the 49ers have ever made, by the way. The cultural impact that Richard Sherman brought that locker room and that secondary lives on. And he's got a great tie with Deommodore Lenoir. Sherman helped mentor Lenor back when Lenor was in high school in LA. So the first person I called when the 49ers drafted Deommodore Lenoir was Richard Sherman. So everything kind of comes full circle here. And Lenor then started. I don't know if he was already calling himself the hyena back then, but he's developed a personality a little bit like Richard Sherman's. Right, he's not afraid to chirp out on the field. I think he gets under the skin of opposing teams. Just the other day, he was saying something after the Tampa Bay game. He was saying that Tampa Bay's receivers were talking as if Mike Evans were on the field, but Mike Evans wasn't on the field on Sunday. Now, this signing comes right after Tampa Bay's receivers managed only 4 catches for 28 total yards against the 49ers. And that included the 49ers group helmed by the Hyena, which I think is a perfect nickname. You wouldn't think that somebody would want to call themselves a hyena. At first blush, that's like a negative, derogatory term, but Deommodore Lenoir justifies it like only Deommodore Lenoir can. He says, no, I'm the scrappy guy. I go out and eat. I don't care if it's dirty. I'm going to make it work. And that really describes his style of play because he's not afraid to get inside at that slot corner position. And, we got to play it one more time. This was so good. I mean, this is what Deommodore Lenoir is all about. He's lined up at linebacker. He's essentially the third linebacker here.
And he's getting blocked. He's
blocked. He's blasting people.
He's much more under control, but he almost profiles a little bit like a Dre Greenlaw as a corner, but without the high end craziness, right? Of like Greenlaw's going to
craziness. Yeah, I get it. Greenlaw's
going to commit penalties that are just crazy. Like, oh my god. Yeah, but you accept it because of how it's worth
the tone that it sets.
It's part of the package. Yeah,
it is
part of the package,
and they miss him now. Although Devondre Campbell just delivered his 2 best games, which gives that's one reason why this 49ers defense. I think the DVOA loves them, has them ranked at number 4. I think the DVOA has the defense overrated. EPA has them at number 12. So split the difference. Say that this is the 8 or 9 defense in the NFL right now. I really think they can make a run at being a top 5 unit over the back half of the season. If Greenlaw does return, even if he has to be the third linebacker because Campbell is starting to get comfortable, right? So you combine good linebacker coverage with somebody like Deommodore Lenoir, who's able to be one of those joker hybrid types. And that's, I think I didn't finish my thought earlier. I got sidetracked because there's so much to discuss right now. But we look at the top paid cornerback in the game, and that's Jalen Ramsey. Remember that in 2020, playing under defensive coordinator Brandon Staley with the Rams, Jalen Ramsey started playing the star position, and everybody was making a huge deal of it at the time. And what it was Jalen Ramsey moving inside to play slot cornerback when the Rams went into nickel and being versatile enough to handle inside cornerback and outside cornerback on the other 33% of snaps. That was a huge deal. Now Ramsey's the highest paid guy in the league. Well, guess who's playing the star position for a team that has Brandon Staley on the staff right now? Deommodore Lenoir. So that inside-out versatility, I think, just interplays so well with everything that the 49ers are doing and helped them get paid. That's for sure.
It hasn't gone as well as I thought it would for Isaac Yiadom, but it, the domino effect of that is that it allows you to sign the best available corner or nickel. Right? You don't have to pick one or the other. You just get the best available, and Lenor can do the other thing. And we'll see. Like if Mooney Ward's not back, then that probably. I wonder if that ends that conversation, and you just prefer that Lenor just plays outside the whole time. But his flexibility is somewhat dependent on being able to do that, right? On having another really good corner that lets him move around the field as much as he does.
Yeah. Well, and with Charvarius Ward too, obviously we do have to mention, I'm sure most have heard of this, but his 1-year-old daughter, Amani Joy, passed away. And that tragic news has meant a leave of absence from the team. So he was away last week. Kyle Shanahan said there's a chance that he does return this week, but the 49ers obviously aren't going to press him to return to action if he needs to be there for his family. But up until this point of the season, Deommodore Lenoir had made his move as the 49ers preeminent cornerback, and Charvarius Ward started really coming along and regaining some of the form that we had seen in 2023 over the past 2 games, the 2 games prior to his leave of absence. So Ward is trending in the right direction. He's obviously in his final year under contract for the 49ers. It was always tough to envision San Francisco being able to extend 2 cornerbacks with high level money. something that, Kansas City wasn't able to extend L'Jarius Sneed last year. They did the whole tag and trade with him. You wonder if Charvarius Ward is headed down that path, or if the 49ers are able to find a way to keep the gang together. But they do have Renardo Green now, and he's part of that mix. And Renardo Green has worked his way into the top trio of cornerbacks for this team. So they've gone from the start of this season only having, or really having, no proven cornerbacks under contract beyond this season, to now having Deommodore Lenoir under contract for 5 years. Renardo Green has now emerged, so you consider him a future staple for this team. And we can now see what they do with somebody like Charvarius Ward, what they do with somebody like Isaac Yiadom moving forward.
There's a big picture conversation with this team that's constantly going. One, there's two parallel, to borrow from the Warriors, James Wiseman pick. There's two parallel paths here, right? Developing for the future and trying to win a championship. And right now, and we can talk about it later if there's time, kind of what the path to winning the division looks like this year. And, why that is the discussion right now as it relates to this team. It's not, can they win the Super Bowl right now? It's, can they make the playoffs? But the other discussion is about their window. And my opinion has been for a while now, your window is open if you have a good quarterback, and they have a good quarterback. But the reason, and this is my chance to hammer this home, I feel like once a month I bring this up, but it really is a critical thing. The Chiefs won the Super Bowl last year because they have Steve Spagnuolo, because they have Andy Reid, because they have Patrick Mahomes, and also because they drafted depth really, really well in the 2021, 2022, and 2023 drafts compared to the 49ers. Now, they were a little ahead of the 49ers in their evolution because they paid their quarterback already. But when you look at those three drafts, the players that they drafted played 74% of the available games in rounds 1 through 4. Okay. The Niners were 51%. So they got 23% more games, the Chiefs did, out of their top 4 round picks in those 3 drafts. Overall, when you factor in rounds 5, 6, and 7, the Chiefs picks in those 3 drafts played in 63% of their available games. That's pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
The Niners was 46% of their available games. That's a significant difference.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And that's why this year's draft was so critical for the Niners to kind of get on that Chiefs train of draft productivity. The Niners have drafted the high end really well. I mean, trying to come up with who are their top 5 draft picks of the Shanahan era, it's a hell of a list. Somebody is getting left off that list. If you just go, okay, let's just go off the top: Bosa, Purdy, Debo, Kittle, Warner. Boom. All right, who'd we leave off? You left out Ayuk. You left out Jauan Jennings as a 7th round pick.
The value
you left out Dre Greenlaw. You left out Deommodore Lenoir.
5th rounder. And that 5th round magic is really something. And I know we emphasized it a little bit earlier, but
so is the 7th round magic.
5th and 7th round magic. They like the odd rounds, right? Because the 3rd round was Fred Warner, and the 1st round success rate hasn't been terrible. They get this stigma for the 1st round because the first year ended up so bad, right? With Reuben Foster and Solomon Thomas. But we have to put it all into perspective.
And the Kinlaw pick.
And the Kinlaw pick. Yeah. But here's the thing. The league-wide hit rate is less than 50% on 1st-round picks. The draft is the ultimate crapshoot. This is what people don't grasp. They think that the 1st round is slam dunk no matter what, but it's not. And there have been hits in the 1st round, including the Nick Bosa pick. And people say it's obvious, but if it were that easy, then somebody like Caleb Williams would be good. I don't know if that's going to, or you might be a bigger Caleb Williams guy than me because you followed the Pac-12 a lot. But I
still think there's hope for him. But
okay, and that's fair. Jury's still out. Jury's still out in that case. But Bosa's hit in the 1st round. Brandon Ayuk is hit in the 1st round. I think that Ricky Pearsall is on a good track to hit in the 1st round. We'll see. I think the jury probably is still out there. You also have to factor in that they gave up a ton of 1st round picks with the Trey Lance trade, which obviously that draft pick didn't work out, but they didn't pick in the 1st round there for a few years. But they do have a handful of hits in the 1st round, and I think their success rate, if you do the math, is at about 35 to 40%, which it's like 45%, 45, 46% in the league. It's not this exorbitant number. So
Ron Wolf once famously said it was like 33%. Like if you hit on 33%, that's pretty good. And he was one of the great drafters.
And yeah, and they're hitting at way above the average in these later rounds, which is more than made up for the first round. So nobody's saying that the first round has been great, but I think the draft, just my analogy, guy, it's throwing darts up against a board, and every round means you're a step further from the board. So first round, you're really close. You would think that you would hit more often, but sometimes you'll still miss. Seventh round, you're really far back. And what the 49ers did in the seventh round is they hit an absolute bullseye from 20 yards across the room, right? With both Brock Purdy and Jauan Jennings. They've hit bullseyes with George Kittle, Deommodore Lenoir in the fifth round. That's a little bit closer. So they're just great long-range shooters. They're not quite as good at short range. But my case is that it hasn't been the complete and utter catastrophe that some people make it out to be in the first round. They've still gotten players in that first round that have been big time contributors.
Yeah, I think the real issue is just that they've had some drafts that overall were not productive, and it has hurt their depth. Right? Like Drake Jackson, when they drafted Drake Jackson, it looked like it was a luxury, like it's a luxury pick. You'll have a year to develop and on. And well, it hurts now that they have not found another edge rusher, just a solid edge rusher, right? You don't need another Bosa, but just a solid edge rusher. It's probably unfair. What round was George Karlaftis a first round pick or a second round pick?
I think
he was picked 30. He was picked 30.
He was late first. Okay. So he snuck in there. They have the fifth year option.
Yeah.
With that.
But like, that's an excellent pick at a position you don't necessarily, you feel like if it's not a top 5 edge rusher, it's not going to be a productive, but that's productive depth. Brian Branch, right? Critical player for the Lions, second round pick, 45. And this is where I go back to your point on Pearsall. I know we're talking about Lenor here, but the thing with Ricky Pearsall is not he needs to become Brandon Ayuk 2.0. That you would love that. It's certainly not. He doesn't need to become Justin Jefferson. He just needs to become a guy that has a high enough floor that a good team can really rely on him. And I do think he's trending towards that, even though it's early. But the fact that Shanahan trusts him early, although he did trust Dante Pettis early, the fact that he trusts Ricky Pearsall early, maybe put him back on punt team. The fact that he trusts Ricky Pearsall early at that position does. Now they needed somebody. They need help. Somebody's got to play.
And with Dante Pettis, the toughness was a question throughout the whole thing. The whole Dante Pettis experiment led the 49ers to go in the complete opposite direction in the 2019 draft and go with Deebo Samuel. Pettis was a finesse receiver. Deebo Samuel was a complete bulldozer. I mean, they went from one extreme to the other. They decided we need to have physicality at the receiving position. And I know there's absolutely zero question about the toughness that Ricky Pearsall brings to the table. I think that they really believe that Ricky Pearsall is this hybrid of the movement ability that Dante Pettis brought to the team, but with the toughness. Obviously he's not as big and strong as somebody like Deebo, but they really do believe he's got the toughness of the newer age 49ers receivers, the guys they started going after post 2019.
It was the most frustrating win of the Shanahan era on Sunday. But I will say, so my point is, like, I'm not going glass half full here on that game, but seeing the yak in that game, and Pearsall was a big part of that,
179 yards
was pretty refreshing given how absent it had been.
My stance on that game is I think people are letting how atrocious the special teams was bleed into their offensive and defensive valuations a little too much. Brock Purdy threw for 353 yards. I get it. They whiffed on 2 red zone possessions, but it wasn't like they were 1 of 7 in the red zone. They were 1 of 3, and they missed 3 kicks. So, I mean, if you make those 3 kicks, that's a 30-point game for the offense. And the offense is ranked in the top 5. And I think it's a fair ranking based on what Brock Purdy is doing. And now I think they're going to back that up with Christian McCaffrey back. I understand looking at the defense and scratching your head a little bit because they did give up some big runs over there in the second half. But does that level of damage happen if they don't muff a punt, right? Does that level of damage happen on the ground if Jake Moody makes those field goals and Tampa Bay's not right in the game? I think if they're up by more than a score, which they should have been, without the special teams lapses, they get to go after Baker Mayfield, who didn't have any receivers, instead of the Bucs running the football. So it's all connected. And I just think that the special teams was so epically bad that it's contaminated the view of what the offense and the defense did for the 49ers. Now, they absolutely have to find more consistency on special teams. I'm not saying they don't. I just think that their offense and their defense is in a lot better spot than some have insinuated. Let's put it that way.
I think some of the numbers, and you did say that you think some of it is a little misleading. I think what's been frustrating, and part of the reason this game was so frustrating, even outside of the special teams for me and for a lot of people, is that it looked, I've seen that game 3 times already, and they lost 2 of them. They lost that game to the Cardinals. They lost that game to the Rams. They almost lost a game that was much more dominant, or at least nearly, I don't want to say almost lost, but nearly blew the Dallas game, right? That game got way too close. So I think that's part of the frustration is these guys normally, when they have the Rams or the Cardinals on the ropes, they put that game away. It's been weird to see their inability to run the ball at times. And I saw you and Kawakami talking about this, and Tim brought it up, some of the first down runs.
In the red zone, yeah.
Especially in the red zone.
That's the fix they need to make. They need to start throwing the ball more on first down.
I also think Brock made some really special plays late in that game. I didn't think, and Brady said this, he says the quietest, at one point they put it up and it's like 315 passing yards. And Brady's like, that's the quietest 300 yards I've ever seen, which is probably not the quietest ever. But Brock Purdy throwing for 353 is not the 49ers recipe, right? It's not most people. If your quarterback has to throw for 353, I don't know what we get. Josh Dubow could probably look this up in 8 seconds. But what your record is when your quarterback throws for 350, it's throwing for 350 in college. Good. In college, I bet it means you win. In the NFL, it doesn't. Like, I bet if we went and looked at Josh Allen when he throws for 350, those are not 20-point wins for the Bills, right? Those are games that are in the balance.
Which is why we got to look at efficiency stats. I think the problem is that everybody plays fantasy football, so the yardage means so much to them in their league.
Well,
but Purdy was adding half an expected point every single time they snapped the ball on a drop back pass. Think about that. That's absurd. Lamar Jackson is on pace to be the MVP at this point of the season. His EPA per dropback is 0.3. So Purdy was at 0.5 over the course of this game. He was significantly better than the league leader. If he keeps on doing that, I'm saying he's going to be at that number 1 spot in almost no time. That's how good he was on a per snap basis.
I thought it looked off for 3. And not bad. There were still good plays. But I thought he was really, to me, what impressed me about that game, David, was we've seen them in these situations this year a few times where it's late in the game, you need a drive, or you're trying to protect the lead and you need a first down, or you just got to go make a play. And he did that several times in this game. And that
McCaffrey and Kittle.
Yeah, it was.
Then there was the crossers, the Debo. There's been a lot of talk about this. Initially, I wanted to talk about this, but Deommodore Lenoir signed. By the way, those of you just joining, because I know people are probably scrambling to the computer with the breaking news. So we'll get back to this in just a second. But 49ers have signed Deommodore Lenoir to a 5-year, $92 million deal. He is now, depending on which way you look at it, and we're going to get many more angles as details come out. This is what we have so far. Based on this, $18.4 million per year. He's the 12th highest paid quarterback in the league. The $92 million total ranks number 6 among corners. We have both agreed that Deommodore Lenoir is a top 10 corner. We've been talking about his fit, and we've been talking about the 49ers' excellent drafting, especially in the 5th and the 7th rounds. So we talked for 20 minutes about Lenoir, and now we happen to be talking about his 7th round counterpart. Deommodore Lenoir is the 5th round guy, Brock Purdy. And we're talking about what he looked like on Sunday, because it's fitting. I think that this contract for Deommodore Lenoir really sets the table now for the 49ers to go all in on negotiations for Brock Purdy. And keep in mind that Purdy may not be eligible for a contract extension right now on November 12th, but we are about a month and a half away, or let's say 2 months away from Brock Purdy being eligible for
that's right,
extension of his own. Yeah,
the big Florio idea have Purdy hold out of the bowl game until he gets his NIL money. You remember when Florio wrote that basically a month or two ago?
So
Like refuse to play without his extension. Like
yes.
he's a college football player.
He will be eligible for it as soon as the regular season ends.
Which, you know what? If I were the Niners, I would welcome that. Like you want to do this?
You welcome it if you're Purdy. That's the thing. Because
No.
winning a Super Bowl,
I would not welcome it if I'm Purdy, because Purdy's not going to lose any money in the playoffs if this team has to make the playoffs. But he's not losing any money he's only making money if they
get hurt.
He's already got hurt. That's true. That's true. But he's done that once before. The Niners, then he'll rehab and then he'll get it the next year. So I do think the Niners would. That's my point, is the Niners would welcome that, because he's not going anywhere, even if he gets hurt. We've already been through that one time. So I just want to make one point to go back on one thing on Brock.
Let's finish this. First of all, make your point, because I think that we have differing opinions here, and this is a good discussion.
Yeah. So some people, I'm sure, watch your channel all the time, David, and don't watch me. I'm very pro Brock, and I have been for a long time. And I just spent a good amount of time this last week with his former quarterback coach, who I know you spent a lot of time with. And I talked to him about it. You wrote a big piece in The Athletic about Brock at Iowa State, and I called the Iowa State game this last weekend. Taylor Mauser is now their offensive coordinator, and he's from Arizona, and knows Brock and coached Brock and loves Brock. And I talked to him a lot about Brock, and he had, as you would expect, great things to say. The one point I want to make is I do think that when we look at the best quarterback efficiency stats, they're not always the best quarterbacks, right? Like you go back to last year and Tua is at the top of that list. Brock is at the top of that list, and was also, to me, what was unique about Brock's 2023 season was he was at the top of a lot of the efficiency stats, and he was also one of the best quarterbacks in the league. And I think he is. I mean, he is where the Mike Sando tiers have him as a top 10 guy. That's where he belongs. He is that guy. And he's still young, and he's got time to become the 6th best guy or the 5th best guy or whatever it turns out to be. But I do think sometimes the best, the guys that go down as the great quarterbacks of their era are judged in the biggest moments, right? Not by the metrics. Yeah. And so that's why I thought this last game, even though I didn't think for 3 quarters Brock's play matched up with what the metrics said.
Well, the metrics got big time boosted by the 4th quarter.
Okay, well, that makes sense. That's great. Like what I've been saying consistently this season, anytime there's an opportunity for Brock to have a comeback drive, or the Niners are up by 3 and they need a 4-minute drive, or it's a 3rd and 3 coming up and the defense is going to blitz and Brock has to make a play. Like, I think we should all relish those moments, because those are moments for him to do the things that the best quarterbacks in the world, in the history of the sport, have done, which is no matter what has happened for the last 3 quarters. How many picks, how many turnovers did Joe Montana have before the drive? 5? Like,
he had 5, I believe is 5.
I think
it was 3 picks. It was 3 picks,
and
but
2 fumbles.
Or maybe 2 fumbles. Might have been
maybe
5.
it was 4 or 5, right?
I think 49ers fans lost count at that point. They were on pins and needles by the end of that one.
Yeah.
That was 82
anyway,
NFC
that's
championship game, right?
Go watch that last drive. It's fun. The whole game's on YouTube. I go watch it. So anyway, like that's just the point I want to make on Brock, is all the efficiency stuff, he's got it. He's got it. I mentioned this on my pod the other day. I met Tyler Palco this week, and I was talking to him about quarterback play. And I was just saying to Brock, like I said to him, I watch Brock all the time. He makes all these throws that I just hold my breath, because he lets it go before the DB and the linebacker's trying to get there, or before the receiver breaks, whatever. And he said, no, it's real. Like you can't do it as much as he's done it, as consistently as he's done it, by accident. It's real. Like, expect it to continue. To me, the missing piece is kind of what we saw late. What he did last year against the Browns, but they missed the kick. And, Moody making that kick at the end of this game allows us to also reflect on kind of where Brock was in the clutch. That said, I didn't see Debo go up to Brock after he fumbled and say, lock in, Brock, protect the football high and tight. Keep it up here. That would have been appropriate in that spot, because that was dangerous.
And anyway. You deserve some credit after that fumble is Jauan Jennings.
Of course.
Tim was talking about it today. DeForest Buckner was really good at fumble recoveries.
Oh.
I think Jauan Jennings, DeForest Buckner had an unreal amount of fumble recoveries. Like, it is a skill. It's not.
What is that? Long arms, hand-eye coordination,
and also just the feel for the game. Like, and
Yeah.
Jauan Jennings has an amazing feel for the game. He ran like a 4.6, 4.7 40, yet he still separates. Kyle Shanahan has said he separates better than anybody on the roster. He said that 2 years ago. So that includes Brandon Ayuk. So he knows how to move on the field. He knows where the other guys are, especially the defense. And when you have that sixth sense and you could process it all in real time, that comes in really handy if a football's rolling around and it's total chaos. And you know how to contort your body. And then you got to be tough because you could break your arm, as that the 300-pound men are dogpiling and you're reaching for a fumble.
It's terrifying when you see a quarterback dive for that ball.
But Jauan Jennings is a player, like you'd look at his tape and you're familiar with his game. And even if you had never seen him in a fumble situation, you would say that guy's good at recovering fumbles, right? He just gives that vibe. And DeForest Buckner was also really good at that. But Jennings is the one that did recover the fumble. Just for fun here, I've pulled up the quarterbacks. Well, I'm going to get this up on the screen for us. That this is the efficiency stats, just so we could you had a great point that the efficiency stats aren't everything, but over a long period, I think they're very fun to look at to see where Purdy stacks up and maybe where some of the youngsters that are in the league right now stack up, because there's one guy who's playing out in Washington who I think you might have covered in college, who is extremely, extremely impressive. You ready for this? Here we are. It's the wrong one. There we go. So we can filter that. Let's filter it by the EPA per play. This is since 2022, since Purdy entered the league. I made it minimum of 300 snaps, so that way we can get Jaden Daniels on there. Yeah. Just for perspective, how good Jaden Daniels has been this year. Now, it's going to be tough to maintain it. He's got a much smaller sample than these other guys. But here you have Allen, here you have Mahomes, and then as you mentioned, I don't think that Tua's at the caliber of the highlighted guys. Lamar Jackson has been good. Prescott's been in the top 10. You are getting significantly less efficient the further you get down this list. This is only since 2012, so this is Garoppolo and basically the 12th season when he was really good, and then with the Raiders when he was really bad. Darnold's in there, but let's just focus on the top here. Just focus on where Purdy's at on the top with Daniels, Allen, and Mahomes. And to me, it's cool perspective, because I always look at, and we got Lenor as a top 10 cornerback at the bottom of the screen. People are probably, sorry about that, I cut you off, guy. People are wondering why I got Deommodore Lenoir listed as a top 10 corner while we're talking about Brock Purdy, but the conversation has evolved. Anyway, just looking at this is cool, because I like to see what, you talk to Purdy's offensive coordinator in college, or an offensive coordinator now at Iowa State, Taylor Mauser. It's about the interplay between the play caller and the QB. How high can those two, that combo, make the kite fly, right? And Purdy and Shanahan has turned out to be a really, really good combination. Mahomes and Reed turned out to be a really good combination. And I think that the efficiency shows you just about how efficient it's been. What it only partially shows you, though, is what you were saying, Guy, is that those plays in the very biggest moments that have extra weight in the fourth quarter, they're included in this number, but maybe they should have an adjustment that makes their impact even more illustrated in numbers like this. And we saw those from Brock Purdy on Sunday.
Here's what I don't think is debatable on Brock. He's good enough to win with at a high level, right? The Niners are not in this position because Brock Purdy hasn't been good enough. That's not why they're fighting for their playoff lives right now. And now with McCaffrey back, and I thought McCaffrey looked good, but not fully, like, I think there's another level for Christian to go to. I don't know if you agree with that, but that's to be expected. But
running wise, definitely.
Yeah. I just think from a burst standpoint, maybe there's a little more from him. But whatever you think of Brock, and I know there's the ongoing debate, and there will be, especially when it comes time to pay him. But right now on this team this year, he's not the reason, I don't think, that they're in this position.
So
they're good. This team is talented enough.
Yeah.
Their defense, I think, feels, like you said, situationally maybe not as good as some of the some of the metrics.
Yeah.
They really cannot afford they can't afford a defensive line injury. But maybe they get McCaffrey back. Maybe soon Dre Greenlaw comes back. You hate to talk about the football aspect of it, but they didn't play with Mooney Ward this last week. Ricky Pearsall, in theory, should be better in a month than he is right now. Like, this is still a team that I think has the pieces to get hot. That's what it's going to take this year. I thought you and Tim had a really good discussion about kind of where they've been when they've made Super Bowl runs. They've been dominant one seeds. Well, that's not what they're going to be this year. So they're going to have
more of a 2021 formula.
Yeah.
But I think they're better than that team, assuming their special teams isn't as horrific as it's been. That's my argument.
Yeah, and you made the point, and this is a good point, right? That there should be a level of variance with special teams that allows you to recover and be better than they've been. The reason it's hard to be optimistic about it is because they haven't gone one game without some special teams. Well, maybe they went one, actually. They might have had one.
They've gone one.
Won.
The Cowboys game. And also, speaking of Lenor.
They made a good play, actually, on special.
Lenor, that was the game they lost against Arizona, ironically.
Yeah.
To me, that's the most frustrating loss for the 49ers this season because, A, the Cardinals are in first place now, and you're going to have to catch them. But, B, like, you're looking at this team right now, and you're like, well, the DVOA says top 5 offense and top 10 defense, but number 31 special teams. But you look at that Arizona game, the special teams played its best game. Lenor returned a blocked kick for a touchdown, and they still lost. That was the game where the offense and the defense, especially the offense, let them down the stretch. And when you start talking about different games having different phases of the game, losing it for you, you start to enter this could be a bad team territory, right? The 49ers, I think, have backed away from that ledge at this point. They've won consecutive games. They're favored against the Seahawks. They can completely discard the bad team danger zone with a 2-possession win on Sunday. We'll see if they do it. I think it's very possible, but they still have to go out and walk the walk. But at a time of this season, that was the danger zone. Every single week, a different, it was like you're on a spaceship and all the alert signs are going off, all the lights are flashing, and you hit one light to fix that issue and another light comes up somewhere else. That's where you don't want to be as a football team. I would argue, and I know it wasn't perfect on offense. I recognize the red zone issues. I recognize that the defense got worn down, but I would argue that they have more or less started to isolate the alarm bells to the special teams. Christian McCaffrey's return will help with that. They're not there yet, but that's what they're headed toward, and maybe we'll see it this weekend against Seattle with a resounding win.
Maybe. I think there is a deep fundamental issue with the 49ers, which is that Kyle Shanahan, if given the choice, he'd be the first coach to vote to get rid of all special teams in football and just let me handle offense, and I get somebody to handle defense, and we don't even need to kick, punt, like cover any of that stuff, right? That's like, I'll tell you 2 things I've learned covering college football every week this year. Every offensive coach watches Kyle Shanahan because they talk about him every week. And almost every good coach cares about special teams. Like, even the bad guy, they all care about special teams. They all care about special teams.
Did you hear? I don't know if you're watching the whole show today. The top special teams units in the league are coached by Jim Harbaugh, Dan Campbell, and Mike Tomlin.
Okay, and
so those are your raw. Well, nobody's questioning the quality of those coaches, right? Those guys have done it for a long time, and Campbell a little bit shorter, but he's doing an excellent job. And to me, special teams is a top-down cultural thing of caring from the very top. If you want to be great, the 49ers don't need to be great. They just need to be mediocre. So even though Kyle Shanahan very obviously doesn't care about being great on special teams, I do think it's possible for the 49ers to get to mediocrity.
I'll tell you the commonality I see with those 3 coaches is that none of them are play callers. And I think CEO-style coaches, Harbaugh, I don't know if he meddles like he used to on offensive play calling, but none of those 3 guys are play callers. And so I think when you have CEO style coaches,
it's a good point.
Those guys really care about all 3 phases because part of their job is to manage all 3 phases. I think offensive play callers generally think just put the ball on the 20 and let me work. Right. And I think offensive play, I haven't really thought about this until now. Like if we blanketed and looked at all the offensive play callers, how much they care about special teams. But generally the guys that think they are like the offensive wizards, they're the ones that they're not trying to steal a possession on special. That's what makes Mike McCarthy so weird. Is he's a play caller who lets his special teams coach like take over possessions. And by all accounts, a very good special teams coach. But when they play the Niners, they shoot themselves in the foot on special teams every single time. Like McCarthy's almost too creative. He allows too much creativity on special teams. It's bizarre. But I don't think that's the norm probably for play callers. But anyway, that's what I see with Campbell. Because what do we know about Jim? And even the play you mentioned with Deommodore Lenoir, that's a starter on defense that made that play. When the Niners stopped a fake putt against the Cowboys, who was on the field? The defense, right? Not the special teams return unit. So, I
think they should run punt safe every single time now, by the way.
Well, that's what you would think. And then Cowing had a great return.
Right. But
you're talking about on defense. Yeah.
Well, Cowing had a great return, and I guess that brought some value back to what the 49ers needed. I'm sure it improved the EPA of the special teams in that game. But
I would just like to see Kyle treat a special teams coach like he treats Chris Kasarik, right?
Have that as a very serious position. Give him every
single resource. Pay that guy a bunch of money.
Yeah. Well, they also try to give Chris Kasarik every resource that he needs. Now they've started to invest more in the secondary, but especially early in the start of this run, 2019 was a great example. They poured so many resources into the defensive line. So that helps. I think the argument that you hear from Shanahan about special teams is when there are a lot of injuries, then those by domino effect really compromise your ability to be effective there. And, Darrell Luter Jr. having the punt bounce off his leg in the Super Bowl and then being pushed into the returner on Sunday, that's a relatively inexperienced player at obviously an important position since it's cost the 49ers so much on these punt returns. He's being thrust into that type of action where they don't have these grizzled veterans doing it. And so the 49ers say, hey, we have some injuries leading to this, but every team is dealing with a 53-man roster, right? Every team is dealing, I think, with the reality of injury attrition in the league. And I think my argument to Tim was, hey, if it means putting some guys, and they assigned a guy with McLeod, right? Nick McLeod was 704 career special team snaps. If it means putting somebody in who may not have the top end athleticism or wingspan that Darrell Luter Jr. has, so may not have the ceiling that he has, but he has a higher floor because he has 700 career special team snaps, lower the ceiling of the unit and raise the floor. That's what you got to do. And I think the 49ers are at that point.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Back to the top here before we sign off. We got, we'll go an hour. That sounds about right? We're at 58 minutes. We should reapprise people of the news at the start because I see a lot of people are still filtering in. It's kind of prime time YouTube time right now. 49ers have signed Deommodore Lenoir to a 5-year, $92 million deal. He was on the final year of his rookie contract, making a little over $3 million this year. They call it the proven performance escalator. Deommodore Lenoir benefited from that, so it raised his salary from about $900,000 this year to about $3 million this year. Now it's about to be a whole lot more. 5 years, $92 million. That averages out to $18.4 million. The deal has not been signed yet, but it will be signed tomorrow morning. At that time, we'll probably have more info. Guy went through what he thought might be some of the guarantees. Obviously, we're just speculating on that front. This is what we know, $18.4 million. We'll also take a look at the salary cap situation tomorrow. Maybe that's something that I should do to close this show right now. This is my salary cap sheet. This is for the 2024 season, and then you could toggle over the 2025. So I'll make some real-time additions to this right now. Before this Lenor deal, the 49ers are at $51.36 million. I'm guessing his cap hit is going to stay the same this year. So whatever they don't use this season, they can carry over into 2025 and beyond. So they're currently set to carry over a lot, and they're going to need to carry over a lot because if you go over to 2025, they project to have only 11.4 million of space right now with a total of 33 players on the roster. I know I have 32 written down there, but what we can do, the real-time addition, is add Deommodore Lenoir into the cornerback 1 spot of the 2025 salary cap sheet because he's under contract for 5 new years now. So I don't know what his cap hit next year is going to be. I would estimate it's probably going to be 8 million because they're going to backload it. That's what they always do. So I'll put 8 million and I'll put estimated as a note there on the side. And then this thing calculates how much space they have. Oh, look, they only have $3.4 million in space if that's what the Deommodore Lenoir's cap hit's going to be. So my point is that they're going to have to take all the money that's carrying over. That's 51.36 million, less than that because they're going to spend more this year. Guys get hurt. You got to sign new players. They'll probably carry over around 45 to 50 million to 2025. Once we count Deommodore Lenoir's estimate, that's going to add up to about $48 million of space to pay 20 more players plus a practice. Well, I already have the practice squad here, I think. Yeah, I have a practice squad estimate. So you're going to have to play 20 more players with about $48 million. This is very rough. And then you also have to pay Brock Purdy and find a way to backload his cap hit. It is like surfing a wave. And as you can see, it's a very tight and delicate situation that the 49ers have to execute. So I'm looking forward to seeing the numbers of the Deommodore Lenoir deal to see how they execute that.
One more point I want to make on Lenor, David, is he turned 25 years old on October 6th. You know, one of the reasons I was in favor of signing Ayuk was his age, right? He's one of the youngest players on the 49ers offense, Brandon Ayuk. And anytime you can pay a guy for what you think he's going to do versus what he's already done, that's sound logic. And so paying them when they are about to reach their physical peak is ideal. When you are signing somebody else's free agent, that's not always the case. But when you are giving a first contract to one of your best players, that generally is the case. So that's part of what you really like about this deal is Deommodore Lenoir has just become a star. He hasn't been one for an extended period of time. And I think what that means is that there's still more ceiling to go reach for him. And that makes paying him pretty easy to do.
And that's what they did. They know who they have in the building. They have a guy that they developed from 2021 where he couldn't get onto the field. Ambry Thomas saw the field before him. 2022 when he was a maligned cornerback for a good 80% of the year, turned it on during the playoffs, to 2023 where he started budding into a true versatile corner on the back end, to 2024 where he's become a bona fide star, passer rating of only 65 allowed into his coverage, and he's playing the slot, he's playing outside. Deommodore Lenoir has earned this part of the journey, and the 49ers have had a front row seat to the entire journey, which gives them confidence to pay him 5 years, $92 million. Details will be coming probably tomorrow. We'll keep you updated as they do come. Deommodore Lenoir, top 10 cornerback, and now he's being paid just about like it. 5 years, $92 million. For a change, the 49ers have gotten a deal done early, Guy. I tweeted the "Are you not entertained?" from Gladiator. I could feel Deommodore Lenoir can say that to 49ers fans on Twitter right now. All these stressful contracts, and he gets it done in early November. So it's definitely not as dramatic, but he can ask people if they're entertained after that one.
Yeah. Will Brock's contract be closer in surrounding hoopla to the zero hoopla of Lenor or the way too much hoopla of Ayuk on the spectrum? Because they're like the Lenor process and the Ayuk process are about as opposite end of the spectrum as you can get from the 49ers.
Yes, they are. Well, one lasted a month into the process of the actual season and training camp and that kind of stuff. And this one happened in the middle of the season. So it's like way ahead of schedule. But I think the market's going to be the market for Brock Purdy. There was questions about the market for Brandon Ayuk because of target share was not as high, but his efficiency was through the roof. So his argument was that I need to be paid like one of the top guys. And the 49ers were like, well, we can't quite pay you that high. And our final offer is going to be right at that 30 million. And that's where it ended up. So Ayuk negotiated a hard deal. And I think ultimately the 49ers and Ayuk found that sweet spot. And unfortunately, he's now hurt. So they don't see him on the field this year. I don't think there's nearly as much wiggle room with Brock Purdy. I think that I've shown the stats. We went through it all. I think that all comes in handy now. The quarterback market has escalated with each one of these contracts. Dak Prescott is currently the high water mark at 60. And I think that Brock Purdy is better than Dak Prescott. He's going to, assuming he stays healthy and continues playing at the level that we've seen, he's going to be the next quarterback to raise the bar. So is it going to be 62 or 63? I don't know, but I think it's going to be a little bit above 60. That's where the market's going to be. Sign, seal, and deliver it. And I think that's why there's a chance that this gets done a lot sooner than people expect. But you made the great point that Brock Purdy's not incentivized to get this done all too early, because if he waits through the Super Bowl and the 49ers do go on a big run, then that price tag you could add that Super Bowl luxury tax on top of it. And maybe there will be a bet of that regard made by Brock Purdy, even though I'm sure the 49ers would love to get it done sooner. I just don't think that anybody has reason to make this as dramatic as the Brandon Ayuk situation.
We agree there. I do think there is some incentive for Brock. I mean, Brock did a lot of commercials this last offseason. I'll just make this point and then we'll read some super chats and blow out of here. But, Brock's been pretty open. Like, I think it was his conversation with Kawakami. He said, I'm doing a lot. I'm trying to provide for my family. So I do think Brock has a internal motivation to sign a contract, get the guaranteed money, generational life-changing money, and hit the offseason and be able to just focus on his family and football. I don't know. I'd be curious, like, in his perfect world, is he doing as many commercials as he does? Or is he just doing that now, capitalizing when he's $1 million player, and when he's a generationally wealthy player? Does he keep doing that stuff, or does he scale back on it? And I don't know. The point is just, I do think he's incentivized like his internal motivation, get paid, get it over with, and get back to hanging out with my family and spending time with Kyle Shanahan and getting ready for football season. But
we'll see. I know that he took it seemed like a big moment in his stardom arc in Tampa. You were describing that game when he made that throw to Christian McCaffrey and then followed that up 4 plays later with the throw to George Kittle. I mean, those are bailout plays that come from superstar players. And to the degree of difficulty on both of those connections necessitated a superstar being on both the throwing and the receiving ends of them. That's all I know. That's what I'm watching. As far as what Brock is like before and after this contract as a person, and what exactly he's going to want, I think that's right now the fog of war. I think that we're not exactly sure, but we're certain to find out. And that is going to be probably the next big contract after this Deommodore Lenoir deal. So we do have a few super chats. First from Heather, thank you. Dream Team Niner coverage. Love the realistic coverage. From a diehard in Kentucky. Hi, Heather. I'm actually in Nashville right now, but I'll be in San Francisco.
I think they play Duke tonight.
Are they? You're the college basketball guy. Are they playing Duke?
I don't know. Maybe that was yesterday.
Has college basketball season?
No, it's tonight.
For sure. It's tonight.
Oh, yeah. Cool. I had called UCLA game on Monday.
Oh, there you've been all over, and you were calling an Iowa State Kansas game, and I guess that
at Arrowhead.
I guess that Dominic Pooney won the bet, right?
He did. Yeah, you got me that intel, which I used in the game.
So I think yesterday Purdy had to wear Kansas gear.
Thank you for that intel.
Facility. So I'll follow up on it for you tomorrow.
All right.
We've got YouTube commenter here saying, I knew they wouldn't let Deommodore Lenoir hit free agency. Demo's excellent. Question, are we sure Huff gets his job back from Mustafa? We're not even sure if Talanoa Hufanga is going to return this year. He's working toward trying to return. And he's got torn ligaments in his wrist. So I think at some point there's going to be a question of, does he try to come back with a cast or a club? And then the 49ers have to say, okay, well, is Hufanga playing with a cast or a club a better option than Mustafa, who's been really, really, really good? If Hufanga does return, Guy, and if the 49ers don't see any other injuries at the safety position. If Jair Brown is trending in the right direction, I almost think that maybe they work Talanoa Hufanga in a similar fashion as 2021. The third safety, when they need it, it was almost a linebacker type.
Right.
I think they could get creative with this. That was D'Amico Ryan's first year as defensive coordinator. Maybe Nick Sorensen will have a chess piece that he can use. But this is unfortunate, and I hate saying this, but it's just the reality of the sport. More likely than not, you're going to need somebody to sub in because of health issues. That's just how football is. So let's just let it work out when Talanoa Hufanga is ready to come back. Here's another one from Gabriel. Demo's an absolute stud and best extension in a while. Perfect for the defense. Stop wasting money on defensive tackle. Malik Collins is unreal, just like DJ Jones. Malik Collins is really good. They're not wasting money on him. That's for sure. He's in top 5 in pass rush win rate. He's already got 4 sacks. His career high was 5. So Malik is a really damn good player. I do have to agree with that. I think that if they get Javon Hargrave back, I think Gabriel's referring to Javon Hargrave because that's the big money contract at defensive tackle. They could get him back for around the playoffs. He had his best game before he got hurt. He had 6 pressures against the Rams. He's explosive. I mean, you can't deny the talent pass rushing wise. So, I mean, you may think Javon Hargrave's overpaid, but if the 49ers can get him back, they'd be very happy to this season. And then finally, one more. This was probably referring to what you were discussing about the Chiefs earlier. Mahomes, Kelsey, and Jones have missed a combined 10 games, excluding the COVID year, which is a big part too. So were you talking some availability earlier? We've talked about so much here over the last 70 minutes. Yeah, I know you mentioned the Chiefs at one point.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
All right. Well, thank you.
That is good. That's good to know. That is good information. I will use that information later. Thank you, James. Appreciate that.
James has us stumped right now. But Deommodore Lenoir doesn't. 5 years, $92 million. Big deal. He's up at the top of the charts. Not at the very top, but he's in that top cluster now. And I think everybody agrees that this is an efficient extension for the 49ers. Nobody can chart the future. Guys can obviously get hurt. Nothing is a slam dunk. Everything is a risk. As they say, all investment is a risk. But this is investment that we saw coming from the 49ers. And it did indeed happen early. So, Guy, thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time. Glad we did this.
Yeah. We did not plan this. We did not get a tip from Demo, but we had this show ready to go, and then all of a sudden the news broke 2 minutes before it went on air. All right, man. Good night, and will I see you this week at the 49ers facility, or are you traveling for basketball?
Ooh, I am not traveling this week, but I also don't know that you'll see me this week.
All right. Well, maybe you'll surprise us. I'll let you know what Dominic Pooney says.
Yeah. I want to hear about that.
Cool. Thanks, man.
Right.
We'll see you soon.
See you, dude.